At that time with Nardella and Thomas, and they talked about this idea of harm Inkel and the idea of hitting him with a truck. Did they talk at all about the Merzen brothers or any of the other people who were coming forward?
They talked about, they told me they had a whole list of names of people that had given statements to Philip Inkel.
Okay.
And they said they wanted everybody on that list to be taken care of, especially Stephen and Ian.
Did they say how they wanted to do that?
They didn't want them killed, they wanted them run out of town. They wanted to make their lives live in hell.
Did they have a time frame for doing that?
They said after it blows over, whatever.
They wanted to make their life a living hell?
Right.
Like what? Give me an example. Like start fights with them, get them arrested?
Yeah, but they said it was okay if I beat them up. Or, you know.
Now, you had that happen before where they kind of sanctioned you to beat people up?
They never asked me. They just told me it was okay if I did it.
And then you wouldn't get arrested if you did beat up Mr. X or Mr. Y?
Right.
Could you give me some examples of who you did that to?
I beat up Jeff Wilson once at McDonald's.
Okay.
And I beat up Jeff Wilson and Robert Rutchuck at the same time at McDonald's. Not at a different period, but they were both there.
Okay. And you didn't get arrested?
I didn't get arrested. The police were called both incidents, but I didn't get arrested for one.
I mean, you could handle yourself. I mean,
yeah.
In fact,
they know about my training.
Yeah, right. Well, you had some training, boxing, martial arts, something.
Got arrested.
All right. One time you beat up the Constable Gendron, and they didn't even arrest you for that. Was that
right?
Okay. And that was in front of people, and he was pretty, he showed on his face that he got beat up. You never got picked up for assault on a police officer?
I didn't give me bruises or anything, but I just rolled and did some wrestling and all that stuff.
But you beat them, and people know you did, and you never were arrested.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And that was Gendron on duty when that happened?
Yeah. Okay. Officer Thomas was there, and Officer Thomas told me later on, because they don't really care for Gendron a whole lot. But Officer Thomas told me later on that he had counted to 50 before he got on top of me while I was beating up.
So you could do a job on his part or his fellow officer.
And when Officer Thomas tried to stop me, I was on top of Gendron with my legs over him, with my legs and my arms, and Officer Thomas straddled me, and he was like, "All right, Todd, that's enough." And I grabbed Officer Thomas's leg and turned him over too, but then he got a little rough over me.
When Nardella and Thomas talked to you about harming Inkel, they were on duty then, weren't they?
Yeah.
Okay, so it was actually in uniform in the police station. Okay. Now, did there come a time when you saw Phil Inkel and talked to him about this idea that they had?
Since the day that, I didn't believe the loose cannon stuff about Phil Inkel. I always thought he was a good guy, and he was smart. And I've always wanted to approach him and tell him about Officer Thomas and Officer Nardella's offer to me. But I didn't know what would happen. I didn't know he had backup. I didn't know he had help, and I didn't think there was anything he could do for me. So I never told him. But after a while thinking about it, and it was getting on my conscience, it was eating away at me, I finally approached him. And Wednesday.
That's Wednesday, the 27th of July.
Yeah,
last past week.
Yep.
Okay.
And I told him I said to have your attorney contact.
Okay. At that point, you didn't know whether you had an attorney or not.
Right. Well, I thought I did assume that he had an attorney.
Yeah. Okay. And basically, did he want to know what you wanted to talk to the attorney about?
He knew.
Did you tell him what you wanted to talk to him about? Did he ask you?
I didn't tell him it, but he asked me a lot, and I didn't tell him at first.
This is Wednesday.
Yeah.
Okay. Where'd this happen?
At John Deere, D&H 100.
On Main Street.
Okay.
What did you end up telling him?
I told him that I was off the money.
Okay.
And everybody else knew that.
Now I'm going to just jump back again at this point in time for somebody to let go, and then I'll come back to telling Phil Wednesday night about the plan. You said that the night they talked to you about the plan, or the time, what time of the day was it? The night when they first talked to you up at the police station about this plan, remember?
About 10:30, 11.
Daytime?
No,
nighttime. Okay, all right. You said they also said they knew they had a list of other people that they wanted to get, or they were
there are people that Phil Inkel had taken statements from.
Oh, okay.
And they had somehow got a hold of their statements.
Did they make statements to the effect of we're going to get everybody on the list?
Yeah.
Okay. And you have learned either through hearsay or other people that Phil Inkel claims they took legal papers that he had written up on people that were involved, knew he'd beaten or knew they were doing things wrong, and he was trying to make an investigation, and they took that stuff from him when they beat him up.
Yeah.
You don't know that firsthand, but you know that he claimed.
There was even a statement from me in there, which I didn't sign. Because
they asked you that.
Yeah.
So they knew that you had an unsigned statement.
Right.
Which would make you think they had the statement.
Right.
Well, it's what they don't. All right. Do you know anyone else they mentioned that they told you had given statements?
They told me about Charity Timorinsky, Jamie Martin. There was a few people.
Christy Peters. Well, those three people you named all girls.
Robert Rutchuk.
Okay. Rutchuk gave a statement. Anybody else?
Anthony Gardner.
Okay. How about Ian Merzen?
Ian. They told me about Ian. And there was lots of others on there.
How about Mike Sinklitz, also known as Stinky, as they call him?
Yeah, Stinky.
Okay. So it was clear that they had information from some source that people were giving statements to Phil Inkel, and they wanted them to get in trouble too.
They had the statements.
Did they tell you that?
Yeah, they actually had.
They show them to you?
They didn't show them to me. They told me they had the statement.
All right. And you've learned since then that the claim is they actually took Inkel's legal papers and that included these statements.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, we're back to Phil Inkel seeing you Wednesday night up at John Deere on Main Street in Colchester. You do tell him, after he presses you a few times, that what you're going to tell him is that these guys had a plan to get you to kill him.
Right.
Okay. Now, let me tell you just a little background so you understand what we then learned. On Thursday morning, the morning after this happened, I had to be in court with Mr. Merzen, his two sons, and two other youngsters that are charged in the breach of the peace that allegedly occurred at Chucky's Easy Mart the same night that Merzen's boys were arrested, the night before the morning when the Merzen boys were arrested and beaten at Troop K. We went to court. Also that day, Phil Inkel had a court trial scheduled on the case at McDonald's where he was allegedly beaten by Nardell and Thomas. So all this activity is going on in GA21 in Norwich, and in comes Ed O'Regan, who called, while I was in the state's attorney's office, he called and sent his secretary across the foyer to get me, saying it was urgent. And it turns out the urgency that he wanted to impart to me was that Inkel had told him that they had a plan to kill him. Ed O'Regan, as I understand it, and this is what he told me, I'm paraphrasing, it may be somewhat incorrect in terms of memory, or a lot of other things were going on that morning, but he had somehow contacted Chris Droney, the United States Attorney for the Federal District of Connecticut, and that Mr. Droney was going to respond to this possible contract of death threat on Inkel's life, O'Regan's client. In the same time frame that I'm being told that, I also had a phone conversation with Kevin Kane, the number 2 Part A state's attorney from the London Judicial District in Bob Sadie's office in London, that he was going to come up and try to continue the Inkel trial because of the pending investigation of the whole Colchester mess, particularly Nardell and Thomas. And that he wanted to meet with me and talk with me about the investigation and how serious I thought it might be. And I was, of course, there to get my breach of peace cases continued because I didn't feel they should go forward, one, now until the investigation, so-called investigation of state police is completed. And more important, that I did have no intention of them ever going forward in GA21 in Norwich. They were going to be moved either on a motion at my request to another court, or I would go into federal court and ask for a restraining order to take those cases out of that state court system, because that's where Nardell and Thomas have brought many, many cases, and cases which are now being investigated, and some of which are found to be troublesome, I suppose is a nice word. But anyway, a lot was happening there that morning. While all this is going on, in come 2 FBI agents, Jim Herbert and his partner, a short guy with black hair, I forget his name. And they got me alone and essentially wanted to know, is this a serious thing, or what's going on here, before they even talked to Inkel or his lawyer. And I told them, yeah, it's very serious. And there's no joke, and this isn't some people going off the deep end, that we got to spend some time and talk about it. That happened in the public defender's office, in O'Regan's office. Across the hall, Kevin Kane, in essence, is asking me the same kind of thing. Is this serious, Mac? What do you think? And, you know, my background is as a federal prosecutor. I've been appointed twice as an independent state and/or federal prosecutor. You know, I have somebody, I've been around the track, and I have some credibility in the business. And if I say it's serious, they listen. Or at least I hope they do. So So I'm telling Kevin the same thing. What I also told both groups separately, the FBI agents and Kevin Kane in separate offices, and I believe I told the agents both alone and when O'Regan came back into the office, that I had understood that you would talk to Phil Inkel, that you wanted to cooperate, that you were worried, you were scared, and you wanted to come in and talk. And I told both Kevin Kane and the agents, probably with O'Regan there when I told the agents, that they should spend their time fruitfully, go out and find Todd Vashon and get him to cooperate, and they would be able to unravel, as it were, this whole ball of yarn and probably short circuit what would be an awful lot of work, work that the state police have already attempted to get going on, although I'm not sure what their real direction was, because I heard the same kinds of things you did about questions they were asking me. Now, I didn't know when I left there around 1 o'clock that day what was going to happen. Thursday night, we had the meeting in Colchester, the police commission, where they had this so-called executive session. We did not participate except at the beginning of it. We walked out of it. They did put these two guys on administrative duty that I had asked them back in mid or the third week in June to suspend with pay if they wanted, because the sense I had was that they were tampering with witnesses, influencing witnesses, having kids give false statements about what happened at Chucky's. But the longer they were on duty, they harassed me and Merzan on one occasion after the beatings. So while left on duty, they were still out, doing things wrong and causing trouble and solidifying the cover-up, as it were. That was not, of course, acted on, and they finally put them on administrative duty Thursday the 28th. But they still are in the office. They still can use the phones. We won't get into that to show that they are using their position. But the point I'm making is we went to this meeting. I talked to a lot more people outside that either wanted help, they wanted someone to speak for them, including Phil Inkel. New incidents came up, and there was some action by the police commissioners, as we characterize it, too little, too late. I went home, I'm exhausted. I've been on this case all day. I go home, I go to bed. Friday, some different things happened. We learned some more information. But the bottom line was, I said to Rich Merzan on Friday afternoon, he's sitting right here to my left, it really would be good if we could get a hold of Todd Vashon.